from Australia, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to The Mitch Moroney Show. Here's your host, Mitch Moroney.
Okay, welcome everybody. Today's podcast, we've got Tom Meagher. Tom is a business lawyer in Perth, Western Australia. So tell us a bit about yourself, Tom.
Well, thanks, Mitchell. Hello, everyone. So I've been in business for now nearly 30 years, believe it or not. I trained as a lawyer, but I left law because I wasn't really too impressed with law way back, and I went into operations and business management for about 8 to 10 years in technology, a big background in technology, and worked on the Bell case as a technology manager. I had my own IT consultancy during the Y2K boom. I was a HR and systems manager for a financial services platform. But then about 18 years ago, I decided to come back to law, but not do litigation. I love doing creative work and making sure things work. So I became a commercial lawyer. So I don't do any court work. I try and keep my clients away from court, but optimize opportunities, avoid risks, and understand things so they make informed decisions. I've gone on to write a lot of articles, and I'm probably leading presenter in Australia of seminars for professionals and business associations. So as you'll probably work out during this, I like to talk, but hopefully share useful and valuable information. So I'm grateful for Mitchell giving me this opportunity to chat today.
Beautiful. And incidentally, that was actually how we originally met, was at a seminar. I think it was on a franchise seminar. I think it was the first one that we met on. And it's been very fruitful since. So that's always good. Okay. So I suppose tell us a bit about what you do at the moment.
Yeah, so as a commercial lawyer, and as a true commercial lawyer, what you do is you cover virtually every area in business law that any business owner comes across, which is a bit like when they sit down with you, Mitchell, and talk about a business plan. Everyone's very good at their core business that they do, whether it's services, goods, hire, or whatever. That's a given. That's why you're in business. But then to understand how a business works, you still have fundamentals. You have your financials, you have your legals, you have your insurances, you might have a premises, you might have employees, you have plant equipment, and so forth, and systems and so forth. All of those things you actually still have to be good at in order for your business to ultimately be successful. And so as a commercial lawyer, what we do is work very closely with our clients' business advisors and key parties. So again, they're good accountants like Mitchell and his team, and then also their insurers, maybe some financial planners, maybe some other IT consultants, HR consultants, and so forth. And so what you do is you collaborate to ensure that you work with the client to understand what are their key issues. So often we deal with their business contracts, making sure that you know their terms of trade, and we should chat about that. Things where people are moving now, we'll talk a fair bit about that today's terms, your website and your website terms of use, or is that just a visiting place? So, but if you trade or sell something, you might need terms of trade on that. And then do you have private information? So we've got that. Then we've got leasing, like physical premises, but you also might lease goods, equipment. They're very big things. They're important. We do loans and securities. So you might lend monies or borrow monies, and are they secured by a mortgage? Please don't use a caveat or the register on the Personal Property Securities Act. And then you've got employment. So you've got employment arrangements and contractor arrangements. And please don't try and make a contractor an employee and vice versa. You'll get into difficulties there. It's like a dog and a cat. They're both pets, but you can't breed them together. They are very different. We'll have a chat about that. We do estate planning, so putting together, obviously, your personal affairs, making sure they're in order. You work so hard through all your life. An unfortunate statistic is more people die without a will. You can imagine it's 40%. In fact, people spend more time booking a holiday online, probably not on a cruise ship anymore.
Yeah, no. Otherwise, you may need a will.
Yeah, exactly. What else? Setting up companies, trusts, shareholders agreements, unit holders agreements, a lot of intellectual property and technology law contracts. So that's I could go on, but that's the core areas. And you probably go, wow, that sort of covers everything I do in my business. You might not need every bit, but those are the things that we help.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And, one way or another, I would say most small businesses would hit all of those or majority of those, and unfortunately it is inevitable, like estate planning, we're all going to die. There is a 100% chance that's going to happen. And, with the business, most businesses have a website. Like you said, is it just a visiting website or is it a e-commerce selling website, different rules, etc.? Are you collecting personal information? If so, the Privacy Act side of things. What else was there? There was intellectual property, which is a big thing, especially in IT and software development.
Yep, your trademark of your business name. You know, you don't own your business name, but you need a trademark. Very important things as well for your brand.
Exactly. And especially if you're looking at expanding, well, there's many different ways, but expanding in a way that you've got third parties coming on board, like a franchise situation, you know, they're buying the name and your intellectual property. So you have to actually own that. Like, that's kind of the important part there.
Correct. So, and contractors, if you don't have a good contractor agreement, then they own it. So
exactly. Yeah. So, and I think there'd be a lot of areas where people just assume it's one way, but in reality, it's not. It's the other way. For example, like the intellectual property on contractors, it could be them. They actually own the intellectual property, and you're leasing it, whereas you think you own it and they just developed it for you and stuff like that. Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting area in general, and we'll go into it in a sec. But just the pitfalls that can occur. What sort of, I suppose, common pitfalls do you reckon people can come up in small business?
Yeah, sure. In small business, the main thing is, and I hear it all the time, when you start a business, they say, I don't have, you know, and I respect it. I fully understand about financials and trying to get it going. And I say, I really, you know, I know I need some terms of trade, but I just don't, I'll do it. Everyone likes me and it's on a handshake. Look, everyone's in love on a honeymoon, but people get divorced. Problems happen. So not having a clear set of terms and conditions for your business, your trading terms on your terms is really problematic. Not to make me happy, but it's actually a clear rule book about how you supply it. What about returns policy? What about rectification, warranty? You know, am I paid in 7 days, 14 days? Do I charge interest? Do I get security for payment if I give them extended term? All of those things. And please don't go and get it off website or your mates. That's like, you know, as I say, you know, there's no law against home brain surgery. You can buy a scalpel and Dettol and watch a YouTube video, but it probably won't go.
It's not recommended.
Not recommended. Not recommended. So terms of trade for your business or terms and conditions. The other one is going into business with someone. And it's very common, and it's how small businesses, and there's generally 2 or 3 types. You do it yourself, sole trader. We'll come back to that. You go together with a friend or a business, you know, and you both bring attributes, money, expertise, assets, whatever. That's a partnership. Or you use a company. Mitchell's the best person to advise you on what is the best structure from a tax perspective. They all have good asset protection, but I would say sole trader, no. I do understand as data, but everything you own, your car, your home, money in the bank gets exposed if your business fails. So please only use a sole trader at the very, very beginning. You should almost always use a company or a trading trust. And again, Mitchell's the best one to advise you on that. And they can be formed very quickly, but please get those structures right. But if you're going into business with more than one person, generally more than one non-family member, then like a partnership can form even without an agreement. It forms under a law, and it's a really new law from 1895. That's right, 200 years ago. Imagine how adapted that is to modern business. It's not. Yeah. So what you need is a modern contemporary equity holder agreement called a partnership agreement. Or if you're in a company and you own shares together, you need a shareholders agreement. And it's not the constitution you get standard. That's just generic. Please don't think that solves your problem. You know, again, Mitchell to sit there and give you advice on how you value the equity and what happens if someone wants to buy in and wants to sell out. Because just like Mitchell said about estate planning, no one gets out of life alive. That's just a fact. But business also, you do get a few options. Preferably you get out alive, preferably on your own terms and solvent. So you want to sell out. So your business succession plan is really, what happens if something happens? You know, can someone buy me out? Or what do I do if someone wants to buy a little bit in, you know, sell down to a junior? So these things are really important to have in place at the beginning. They're actually an investment, not a cost, because I find when people do have a dispute or a problem or someone's died or business is going bad or something, they ring me up. And the first question I said, do you have an equity holder agreement? Oh, no, I don't. Well, that's where actually my role starts to change a bit. And normally you've got to meet litigators, and lovely people, some of them, but you just add zeros on the end of how much it costs to solve the dispute. Whereas if you'd worked with Mitchell and I to put a good shareholders agreement, it's like building a parachute. You cannot make one when you're falling out of the plane. It's too late. You've got to. Yeah. So those are my big tips. Having your own terms of trade and having an equity holders agreement at the beginning. And again, when people say to me, and again, I've got enough work, so I'm doing this to share advice and recommendations too. It's a bit like going to a doctor and saying, I'm thinking of taking up smoking. I'm going to tell you 10 reasons why you shouldn't and all the health benefits, but you're still going to get a bill even if you choose to go smoking. And when you come back and see me with lung cancer, I can do the surgery, but it's really expensive and no one's happy.
Yep.
So there's reasons why I stress these things. So investing and getting good arrangements in place is exactly that. It's an investment, because then if you do have those scenarios, you've got a fallback and you've got clarity. And in fact, what they do is keeps the lawyers away, because you've got a rule book there. The courts and everyone else will say, well, look, you've already agreed how you'll pay this. We've already agreed the other party will return it in this time frame or so. It really helps you with best practice. And I think, how many businesses would you say it's not a good idea to have a cash flow forecast and a financial budget when they start?
Pretty much none of them. They all should look at these things, and I'm sure there's plenty that just go, oh, it'll be right, and then go with it. But I recommend they all work out roughly, how much is your break-even point, and all that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, it's fundamental, isn't it? Even though they know, oh, look, I'm really excited, and I've got all these orders, but you've got to but what a cash flow forecast, and I think that's a fantastic example of what your business gets affected. You just haven't factored in, oh gosh, I've got that rent coming up in the wages, and I've got the tax, and I've got this, I got my first order. You can actually plan and run your business. And so having those vital financial tools, the same with the legal ones. Yeah, they're not sexy, they're not fun, but they're so important to the success. And all successful businesses are built like a good house. You want a solid foundation which you can then layer up the next layer and grow. And when other parties want to come in or buy you out, when they see that in place, you'll actually receive more value for it. So
yeah, 100%. And like the budget and stuff, like we said, with the legal terms and the shareholder agreement and that side of things, get it done at the start. Honeymoon, everybody's happy. You can agree on everything while everybody's amicable. It's all good. Because, if you're in the middle of getting divorced, or, I don't know, your partner's died and their wife suddenly wants half the business or something like that, it is a lot harder to deal with that at that point, as Tom mentioned, probably litigation and courts and all sorts. Whereas if at the start, you invest a little bit of money, you go, okay, well, if this happens, this is the outcome. If this happens, this is what we do. It is what it is. You've all signed it. You all agree. Move on. So, and that goes the same with the terms and conditions, which I'm sure we'll go into in a minute. But say accounting, for example, our terms and conditions are our engagement letter. And so you're not coming to us just to do the tax return and we do it and then it's all sweet, which is the essence of it. But that form, as clients we get you to fill out, is how long do you have to pay us, for example? What happens if you don't? What's our responsibility for the information that's put into the tax return? What's your responsibility? Do you have to keep, does say in there you have to keep records, but it says everything in there. So the entire arrangement between Moroney and Associates and the client is broken down from a legal point of view in that document. Whose rights are whose, where, all that side of things. So, it might only be just an individual tax return and you made 25 grand, but that whole transaction is based off of all this other information and agreement, essentially. From both sides, whether it's the consumer or us, that's what it's worked on, and if we do something wrong, we've signed that we agree to those terms and conditions just as much as they have, and they can say that, or vice versa, and I think that's really important. And a lot of people don't weight it as heavily as it really should, because that can imply everything. As I said, how long do they have to pay you? Do they have to pay you interest if they're late? Do they cover costs if they're like, they're just basic things.
Have they undertaken to give you all the information you've requested that you're relying on in order to prepare your returns for them and everything like that? It's a two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah, if they sign and state that they've provided us with everything and we do it all, prepare it based off of the information provided, and then 12 months later something that was never provided comes out of the woodwork and then they get pinged, we've done what you've provided, here's the evidence, etc.
Right.
And potentially that you wouldn't have that as much security if it wasn't signed that you provided everything to us. So
absolutely, going through emails and he said and we said. So it's just about clarity. It's about certain. That's why you have contracts. It's not that you don't trust each other. It's actually to ratify so that as time goes on, if I tell you a story today, Mitchell, and then I get you to tell that same story to someone else in 2 weeks' time, do you think you'll say it word for word what I told you?
No. Well, we all played Chinese whispers or telephone or whatever they call it now at school.
Yeah.
And even telling 3 people down in a row, it comes out as a different story. So, yeah.
Even with the best intents, that's right. So that's really important. And probably on those, just finishing on those points, and I like to chat on about employment and contractor agreements in a bit more detail, but the best way to look at getting those things done, and the reason why I'm harping on about it comes from experience and why I don't like litigation and why I don't want the clients to go through, because they don't make money out of that, is that a lot of people say, oh, well, I can't afford to do it. It's only a startup business. Well, it's like having a child. You don't expect when you create and have the privilege of being a parent or owning even a pet that's going to bring you money in the early instance. You've got to feed it, clothe it, educate it before you get a return on it, if at all. But if you look after it and nurture it and grow it well, your company, your business will look after you well, all right? And it's how well you invest in it. So getting good advice and getting good structures and getting all these arrangements, I mean, to try and take you out of a sole trader or partnership of individuals into a company, Mitchell, say 3 years down the track and it's worth, say, $200,000 or more, you get a bit of a nasty tax surprise, don't you, in transfer duty?
Yeah, there can be all sorts of issues. Yeah, transfer duty, especially if the 3 partners in that situation aren't the 3 directors in the company. So one's sold out, things get messy. Whereas if you go at the start, let's just say in that situation, do it through a company, you got 3 directors, 3 shareholders, they just can move in and out relatively easily without having all sorts of problems. So it's definitely worth at the start or near on the start, getting the right structures, getting the right systems in place, just for best practice. Yeah, it'll cost a little bit at the start, but it'll save you a lot in the end.
It's proper budgeting, because I get people coming to buy businesses and they go, I've agreed the business purchase price and I'm doing all this. And I said, is this the first time you've done it? And they go, yeah. I said, have you budgeted for things like stock, working capital, transfer duty, advisor fees? What are they? What? I said, you'll need those. They're not optional. They're part of being able to run the business. And I said, that's where you need a good accountant. You need to get that budget. You need to then understand what you're borrowing, what you're actually getting and how you get it. It's all exciting. And especially when someone transitions from being an employee to being a business owner, even if you've worked in a business, doesn't make you qualified at it. I'm not saying don't have a go at it, but go and get advice. Go and get advice of someone like Mitchell and his team, because, as I said, the best university to go to in life is experience. It's just the fees are very high. So what you want to do is actually invest in it. People will go and buy home and contents insurance and think that's an investment all their life. The chance of your house burning down, you'll win lotto before that happens. Honestly, statistically, it's true. So, but the chance of something going wrong in business or whatever is much higher, and we're trying to lessen that, especially in the first couple of years. And so it's great that Mitchell's having this chat with me, because I want to share this information. This is the sort of stuff you can see what I'm passionate about, because we want successful long-term clients, that grow and succeed and optimize them for legitimate tax minimization. You can have better structures, you can have better salability, everything is better.
You've been listening to The Mitch Moroney Show. Mitch Moroney Show. Stay tuned for more.